So, Vaish, thank you so much for chatting to me on the Mindful podcast.
Thank you for having me, Dermot. I've been watching your stuff and I love how you mix humor with mindfulness and especially those parts of our lives that are trying and you show us how to bridge that through mindfulness and keeping on the light side of it. I like it a lot.
Oh, well, thank you so much. I've been thoroughly enjoying your book. And I know that you've such an interesting story. You were a monk. Um, you've written your book, and I guess not a million miles from myself is that you use you try and find accessible ways of bringing this information to people and taking this wonderful wisdom from these ancient texts and making them accessible for the everyday. And I'm all about trying to make things accessible for people and breaking down some of the barriers maybe to some of this stuff. But I know that your training is in something called bhakti yoga. Could you explain that to people who may not be familiar with that world?
Sure. Well, first, the basic definition of the word yoga, because it may conjure various ideas according to
Mm,
one's perspective. It comes from Sanskrit. The root word is yuj, which means to join something together. In
mm,
English, modern English, it's cognate with the word yoke, which really means to connect two things. And what are we trying to connect with? Our original source. And that's what makes us whole. So bhakti is the yoga of love and gratitude in that those emotions are the emotions that open our heart the most and that are most connective to other people and to our source, who's also described as being personal.
mm. I want to get into the four questions from your book, but before we do that, tell us about your childhood because I loved reading about how it even around was at the age of 13 where you were suddenly giving away your possessions and walking to school barefoot. You didn't sound like a regular young teenager.
Yeah, there was something about my childhood that there were a confluence of influences. In the beginning, I remember when I was in first grade, President Kennedy was assassinated. There was a Vietnam War raging. And I just had a natural inclination when I was a kid, even before 13, to ask about death. What was it and what did it mean? Why did we have to die? What was it like after you die, and so forth. And I pretty much sublimated those feelings until I got into my teens. And then it really became pressing, and I wanted to know the answers to that. I started looking through literatures, and I'd go to the library, I'd find whatever I could on ancient philosophies. And some of them advocated first get detached from the world. So I tried that even while I was living with my parents, much to their chagrin.
Oh
And
yeah, what did they think when you were suddenly reading all this strange
my
Eastern
father was a
material and
psychologist, my mother was a sociologist, and they they thought a lot of things. They took me to another psychologist, a family psychologist, said, "What do you think?" And she said she's a seeker, which I found out later is an actual term used in psychology to describe a particular type of adolescent who's, coming into his or her
Hmm.
own and, really deeply asking about the world. So, they were trying, they grappled with it, but they were very open-minded.
Yeah. And so what led you down the path then to being a monk? Was that just a natural continuation of this curiosity of devotion and something bigger than yourself?
I was already attracted to it, Dermot, since I
Mm,
had this sense that let me strip away a lot of the external things in my life and get down to what's really important, the essence of life. And then when I came into the philosophy of the Bhagavad Gita, and I met my spiritual teacher who was propagating the teachings of Bhagavad Gita, and he offered an opportunity to live in what's called an ashram, which means a place where you can experiment with consciousness and live a minimally materialistic life, just the
mm.
bare necessities. Then I really wanted to do that. It seemed like my whole life had been a setup to move into such a circumstance.
Yeah. What is the life of a monk like? I mean, is it all you expected? Did you have moments of crushing boredom? Were you thinking, I wouldn't mind meeting some girls? What was going through your head in those early days?
Well, when I first entered into the ashram, I felt that it was the best of everything because I had friends all the time around me and had lots of service to keep me busy. And I also had a unlimited amount of time to focus on what I was interested in with self-realization.
Mm.
And I mean, I can romanticize it, and it was a beautiful life, and I'm glad I had that as the base of my life going forward. I was a monk for 13 years.
Wow.
But then there was a time in my life when I wanted to transition out of monkhood, which was a possibility in the order that I joined in. I got married when I was 29, and we still, my wife and I, who was also spiritually interested, were able to integrate what we had learned in different places,
Mm.
we weren't together, obviously, into a life of business and owning a house and going forward into the world.
Was it an Irish woman that stole you away from the
Yeah,
ashram?
that's right, Dermot. I mentioned this morning. I said, I'm on with Dermot Whalen, and she said, he's Irish, right? And I said, yeah. She knew immediately. She's from New York, and she's Irish, actually has a dual citizenship. And yeah, it was an
Mm.
Irish.
It's a powerful lure that that siren's call from an Irish woman can
That's
lead any
right.
man out of any monastery. And
Right, right.
so, just geographically, where did you grow up and where was the ashram?
I'm from the Bay Area around San Francisco, and I lived
Mm.
in the suburbs, kind of protected life, really nice childhood. And then the ashram I joined was in San Francisco in the city.
Yeah. Okay. So you didn't have to emigrate or head off to India, or were you curious about maybe going to the birthplace of all these wonderful ideas that you'd been reading about since you were a
Well,
kid?
I ended up doing that as well because after about a year in San Francisco, I was given opportunities to do service in various places around the world. And
Mm.
some of them included India, and I've been there many, many times, as well as other places around the world, Asia, Europe, and so forth. So it was kind of join the monkhood, see the world type of thing.
Yeah. So obviously now I'm calling you Vaish. Your full title is, I hope I get it right now, is Vaisesika Das. Vaisesika Das. That's obviously given to you when you're in the monastery. Do you still have a connection to your old name? Do you ever say it out loud? Do you tell people what it is? Or is that something that you kind of just leave behind the curtain, so to speak?
No, no, I'm totally fine with it. It's my legal name, William Suchek. I use it on all documents, including my
Yeah.
passport, and I have no problem with it. I can uh, cohort with either side of my life
Mm.
well, and that was part of the experiment of being in an ashram, and then how well can I employ the principles that I learned in a normal, so-called normal life. And so
Yeah.
the name, either way.
Okay. I love it. You say questions are the answer. Let's get into some of that. Why are questions so important?
Well, first of all, the etymology of the word question has been fascinating for me. When I found it, it comes from the word quest, which means, according to the etymological dictionary, the search for the Holy Grail. So there's
Mm.
a sense in which when one asks a question, you start a series of uh, jumping off points because if you don't have a question, where are you going to go? So idea is if you want to go somewhere, you ask, how do I get there? And one of the main points in the ancient wisdom literatures that I was introduced to early on that I found to be substantial was a phrase in Sanskrit that says, now is the time to inquire. That's the first statement. And that implication is that if you ask a really deep question, like, why do I have to die? There's going to be an answer. Maybe not immediately, but it takes you on that journey to find it. But you have to start by asking the question.
Yeah. It ties in so conveniently and beautifully into what I've been doing over the last few months in particular. I've been on a national tour And I've been trying to help audiences to step out of busyness for just long enough to start asking some of the deeper questions, the ones that in my past I didn't ask and ended up busy and overwhelmed and burnt out and all that stuff. Um, and sometimes I say to people, look, it's just about asking the question, starting that conversation. You don't have to have all the answers. You don't have to have any answers initially. They might just bubble up throughout the following weeks or months. And I think that sometimes is hard for us to grasp, particularly in today's society. We think, if you put a question into a search engine or an AI engine, you better get that answer straight away and it's got to be perfect. So I think that it can be a difficult concept sometimes for people to go, well, what do you mean I just ask a question and I don't have to have the answers? It can be hard for us to grasp these days.
Well, first of all, I love what you're doing. I've been watching your stuff, and I
Thank
notice how
you.
you're bringing everyone into the conversation in a very approachable way, using humor and bringing up topics that are central to people having a healthy life and being mindful. And, regarding the point you made, I agree with that we have this sense of we want instant gratification. It has to be an immediate right answer coming
Mm,
out of AI. I need it now. There's a kind of mystery to the world, and it implies that there's a higher intelligence. There's an AI that runs the universe that's there available to every living being. After all, look at geese flying across the sky during a particular season, and they know where they're going. And, I see in nature an IQ that is palpable. What to speak of in humans, we have this perceptual horizon where we can look and find causality. And so that's the idea behind this admonition that now's your time, ask the big questions. And then it puts the big search engine into gear. And then in your life, you become much more insightful. And really, it's saying, don't neglect this and think that life is just limited to what you have now. Status quo is not an option. You have to use this lifetime to go above what you think is possible and think much bigger, much bigger than you've ever thought before. And then ask that question, is it
mm.
possible? And miracles can happen.
Yeah. There's a wonderful heading in your book. The quality of your questions defines the quality of your life. Um, and just when I read that, I was thinking, okay, what kind of questions are we asking as a society? So I did a quick search of the most popular question asked on Google for February 2025, and it was, what should I watch?
Mm.
So I'm not sure we're asking the deepest questions every day. So what do you mean by the quality of our questions?
Well, I mean, it depends on our intention. What do we want
Mm,
out of our life? The first question that I pose in the book out of four questions, as the title of the book is, what's my purpose?
mm,
And it's remarkable that with so much facility for using our minds and hearts to look into the meaning of life, we oftentimes skip that. I mean, you can skip it a whole day, a week, a month, a whole lifetime can go by. That the ancient phrase, a life uh, without being examined is useless. Yeah. So, really starting with the idea of where do I want to go? What
mm,
do I want out of my life? During the pandemic, I took a lot of time to sit and write all my priorities, which I claim in the book as a starting point for getting to this overarching idea of what is the main purpose of my life. If you have that in place, then I found for myself, then my questions improve because then,
mm.
like, where do you really want to go? If you don't know where you're going, any road will take you there. Alice in Wonderland and George Harrison put it in one of his songs. So that's a good starting point to increase the quality. Is like, what do you want?
Mm.
Are you satisfied with what you're going to get if you ask a small question? You're going to get a small result.
Yeah. What's the little 10-minute exercise you recommend for people? Just start to begin to sort of tap into this process.
To get a legal pad, I like legal pads because it implies, you have more to say than just on a tiny little scrap of paper. And a pen.
Yeah.
get off the keyboard just for a little while and use your own handwriting. Get a do not disturb sign, put it on your door, and be by yourself. Ask yourself, what do I really want? What's most important to me? It's daunting at first because there's, I notice in myself a tendency is like, oh, come on, don't ask me that. But once it starts to come out and I put it on, I commit it to paper,
Mm.
then it starts to manifest and it puts a map in front of my face. And when I started doing that, I'd take an hour at a time to just really think deeply. I noticed that I was much more thoughtful. And I'd have discussions with my wife. What do you think should go above this? Or how should it be ordered? And so forth. And it starts a discussion in one's life that really energizes because one of the reasons I feel that I become depressed or feel morose in any way is because I really don't have a clear idea of what I'm supposed to be doing in this world. And things are thrust upon me one after another. And how do I deal with them if I don't know exactly where I'm supposed to end up? So
Mm.
that's a 10-minute exercise, or you can spend a little bit longer, but once you start doing it, you'll find that it's natural and it helps you be self-directing.
Yeah. I see it a little bit like setting our own Google Maps. That it's we do it every day with our cars. You sit in, you kind of just automatically put in the code, or the destination. We may take a few wrong turns, but at least we have a chance of getting there. But sometimes with our life, we don't, our stage of our life, we don't bother putting in any directions or any coordinates, and then we just sort of hope we magically arrive at a destination we haven't decided on. We give out when we don't get there, you know?
Excellent metaphor, Dermot. Thank you.
Yeah.
Another way of thinking at it, one way I went to Washington, D.C. a couple times, and I went to the Library of Congress and looked at the original document, the Constitution of the United States. And I was thinking, wow, with this one document, they just wrote down what they wanted. Here's where we want to go. That's been directing an entire society, large
Mm.
society, for hundreds of years. So I was thinking, why don't write my own constitution for my life? Where is that piece of paper on my wall that says this is why I'm here and this is
Yeah.
where?
That's so true. The second question that you suggest we ask can be a scary one, because immediately people feel, oh no, does this mean I have to just quit my job and work full time down at the soup kitchen? It's, it's all about being in service. How do I be in service to others? Is that the question we ask?
Yeah, how may I be of service?
Mm.
And I find that let's take a simple uh, ordinary circumstance, for instance, say you go to a social event and you're not sure how you fit in, you're not sure if you dressed at the right level for the occasion and so forth. Even if you go to a family event, you can feel a little bit on the outside. It's possible to feel awkward. I know
Mm.
I have before. Let's just say you go and there's you walk in and you don't know how you fit in, who you're supposed to talk to. You might find the people who are active there and say, how may I be of service? And let's say they say, oh, can you help us set up the chairs? So you start, oh yeah, you put in the chairs. You don't feel awkward anymore because now you're an insider. You're there doing service.
Mm.
And other people walk in and go, "Oh, that guy works here." They're part of the inner circle. And so what I imply and what I've gleaned from these ancient wisdom literatures is that's how the universe works. If you ask in this world, how may I use my talent, whatever I have to offer in service, then you become an insider in the universe. And everyone appreciates. And if you look in history of the people who are most admired, they're the ones who thought like that. And they said, how can I do the greatest good to the most number of people? And even in corporations nowadays, when they really are worried about the bottom line more than anything, they still add that element in and say, yeah, but you have to make it service oriented to be appreciated. And that's how you're going to get what you want. But if you
Mm.
do it purely, if you get it on that level that I really just want to do service, one of the books that I often read called the Srimad Bhagavatam talks about how when that becomes your main intention, then you feel naturally satisfied because that's how we fit in the universe. And I gave this example of a tiny screw. My teacher gave me this example that if you find a tiny screw on the ground and you try to sell it on eBay, you're not going to get anything from it. But that screw fit in a machine somewhere where it was so useful that its value is inestimable when it's connected. So yoga means to reconnect to your purpose. And when you connect yourself by asking this question in any given circumstance, then your value becomes inestimable. And when you're detached from it, no matter what other things you have, accoutrements and the wealth you've amassed, it just feels as a weight on your head. So that's the idea behind the question.
Yeah, I love that. Is it possible to, and is it okay to be in service, but make a good living and enjoy all the material comforts of life? I think that's where some people struggle. It's kind of an all or nothing. I have to give everything away, or else I'm just not in service. Or, you know, is it possible to? I guess this is maybe the middle path that you teach so well.
Yeah, thank you very much. Yeah, exactly. And you asked that the first time, and I didn't answer that. Uh, The idea is live, don't live to eat, but eat to live. So take what you need to live a healthy life so you can have vitality to explore the real purpose of your life. And there's a term called yukta vairagya, which means see everything that you have as employable in service. So if you have more, engage more in service. If you have whatever you've been allotted in your life, use that in service, and then it becomes purposeful.
Hmm.
So the real renunciation is not artificially giving things up that could be used, but it's using whatever you have for a higher purpose. I'll give a quick example.
Yeah, I'd love you to
What
do
my
that.
teacher used to give, and he said, let's say you see somebody drop $100 on the ground and they're unaware that they dropped it. You have a few choices. One, you can pick it up and walk away. That compares to materialism, like taking the world for yourself, like this is mine, that's mine, I claim this territory and I want the ocean too. The other one is you just leave it. The person's walking away. You could tell them that, you dropped it, but you just say, no, I'm not going to get involved. That's imperfect. You'll still feel a void there because it'll linger, that idea that you did engage it. But the third path is you pick it up, tap the person on the shoulder, and give it back. So the idea is besides the ethics of the whole idea, is it's a metaphor for how we interact with the world. The world doesn't belong to us. It's already here, and we're only here for a short amount of time in geological time. We're here for just a fraction of a second. So while we're here, if we take the things that are in front of us and we engage them in service, which is the middle path,
Hmm.
then we're yukta, we're connecting. We're connecting in our hearts, and we're also connecting those items to their real purpose. That's the idea of renunciation. So rich, poor, doesn't matter if you live in a nice house or a van down by the river, whatever it may be. The idea is that use what you have and you'll feel satisfied.
Hmm. There's a nice quote from Muhammad Ali that you include in the book. Service to others is the rent you pay for your room here on earth. And
Wow.
I like that idea.
Uh,
Uh, what is the lesson? Is the next question. This can be a tough one if you are experiencing some level of hardship. The last thing sometimes you want to do is, hey, I wonder what great learning and growth I can get from this experience. You're like, this sucks. How do I get out of it? How do I make it stop? So take us through that third question of what is the lesson?
yeah, first, I totally agree with you about that. We have to have compassion for ourselves and others and not just jump into the philosophical part. I heard your podcast on
Mm.
grief and it was really helpful.
Ah,
So
thank you.
the idea is that we have two dimensions to our lives. One is that we have a body, we have a mind, we have relationship with this world, albeit it's a temporary one. And at the same time, there's an ultimate goal to life, according to the Bhagavad Gita and other literatures, that we're meant to evolve. Uh, we're meant to evolve our consciousness and come to a higher level. So these two aspects of our lives are always they're juxtaposed and they have to be balanced as we move forward. And so having compassion for what others are going through or for what we ourselves are going through, while at the same time processing not only on the level of going through the grieving process, and as your host, as your guest on the show on grief said, everyone has their own way of processing. We need to allow for that because we do have this aspect of us that we get hungry, we have to eat. If you cut yourself, you're going to bleed and it has to heal. So same thing psychologically. We have to acknowledge that at the same time, there's another way to process it simultaneously, which is to understand that this world is didactic. The world, as I write in the book, give this metaphor, it's a classroom. So if we can ask the question, even as we're grieving, it opens up another channel for us to take the grief and transform it into something that is permanent in our lives, that takes us to another level of understanding the world. And, I know in my life, when my parents passed away, uh, one after another, even though I had been a monk, even though I had studied the knowledge in the Bhagavad Gita and other wisdom literatures and really lived it, and still do or try to do, there's a way in which there's still a grieving process. But
Mm.
at the same time, because I had that question, what I'm meant to learn from this, how will I grow from this? I got the benefit of of having that avenue open for me to ask the question. And I feel that it's one of the quantum leaps that I've made in my life is processing the passing of my parents.
Wow. I guess grief is probably one of the most intense experiences that any of us are going to experience. Um, so I suppose maybe it is where a lot of the deeper learnings are going to be, just simply because it's such a juggernaut of experience, isn't it?
Yes. And I mentioned that in the book that it's not entirely appropriate to wax philosophical with somebody suddenly and abruptly when they're going through grief, because we have to tend to both aspects of the situation.
Mm. There's a lovely heading that you have in your book as well. Frustration is the doorway to insight. And I think that gives you such a sense of relief. I'm sure it will give people listening and watching now a sense of relief, because if we're trapped in a relationship, or we feel trapped in a relationship, or we feel trapped in a job or some situation in our life, maybe we're caring for somebody, and that's wearing us down, or taking up a lot of time and energy and patience. That period of frustration can seem so uncomfortable, but the idea that it is a doorway to some great insight, or a way out, that I think that I find great relief in that, that frustration could be that doorway to insight. Talk about that a little bit to me.
Sure, Dermot. And I got that one from my teacher who
Mm,
pointed out that we're bidimensional creatures in the sense that we are not our bodies or minds. Those are physical. There's gross and subtle physical matter. And that's what our body's made out of, body and minds. We, on the other hand, are a different energy, categorically different, called consciousness. You can't
mm,
measure consciousness the way you measure matter. It's completely different. So while we're ensconced in matter, we have this apparatus called the human body and mind. We're inside it. There's a way that we process the world in different ways. And if we're not aware of that dichotomy, there's a way in which the world always seems to come up short. I mean, hair's never quite right, and I got the wrong color, or getting into any aspect of our lives, it never quite fits the way we want to because we're much subtler than the world we're observing and the world we're trying to rearrange so that it'll become perfect. It never becomes perfect. That in itself is an indication of our separateness from the world itself. Otherwise, we wouldn't notice it.
Mm,
If we ourselves were not that subtle, if we were the same as the material world, we wouldn't notice the difference. And that's what frustration means. Like, why can't this come together the way I want it to? It's because it never will. It's not the kind of energy that you can manipulate and have come out in a perfect way.
mhm. The final of your four questions is where am I investing my intention right now, or my attention, I should say. Um, what do you mean by that? Is this where we go wrong a lot of the time in terms of maybe we want to set our Google Maps in a particular direction, except we're looking out the passenger window for the whole time, so we're veering off course. Is it aligning our actions and our intentions? Is that what this is about?
Sure. And one of my favorite sayings that I collected years and years ago, and I keep with me always, was where attention goes, energy flows.
Mm.
And oftentimes I'm not aware where my attention is going. For instance, I can be reading a book, and if somebody asks me at the end of a paragraph, what did you just read? I don't know because I was thinking about paying my taxes. But I did read it. I don't know what it was. And so we're more powerful than we think. And our superpower is our ability to point our attention any direction we want.
Mm.
When I do guided meditation sessions, I have people start with putting their attention on their breath, then moving it down to an appendage like your foot, and just become aware that now you can transfer it from your foot to your hand, to your ear, and now you can become aware of your own thoughts. And when you're able to objectify your body, your mind, and so forth, and step back from it, you realize that, okay, this is my free will. Now, what happens in the world is I become so externally focused, I get carried away by every situation I'm involved in, and I forget my power. And I'm never satisfied thinking about what might happen in the future because the future never comes. I'm only right here, right now. That's obvious. Everyone talks about it. And
Mm.
thinking about the past also is a kind of churning up of things that happened to me. And, they're not fixable in that context, but only right now. And so if I can bring myself into that small corridor of concentration by asking this question, it really works. If I ask myself at any given time during the day, where am I investing my attention right now? Then we can come into the present moment. The question is like a hook. It's even
Mm.
physically, if you build it's like it pulls you in, it pulls your consciousness back to where you are. And I deliberately use the word invest because just as in finance, there's ROI, return on investment. We want to
Yeah.
know, like, what am I going to get back from my investment? So I coined the phrase return on attention, ROA. What am I going to get back from? So there's a difference. If I'm scrolling mindlessly, what's the return on that? I think
Mm.
David Byrne, remember from the Talking Heads, he had this line in his song saying, I don't know what you expect staring into the TV set. And so there, we're that's like throwing money away uh, when you relate it to finance. Throw your attention away, how do you think you're going to feel? But if you're
Mm.
able to bring your attention back to what's most valuable to you and you put it into something that is enriching and you keep asking yourself, what am I investing in right now? Then it tends to give you that sense of mindfulness that, okay, I control my future. I control my present, even more importantly, and I can be where I want to be by being very deliberate in where I'm placing my attention.
Yeah. In my show, I was talking about a Harvard study that showed that 47% of the time our attention is not on what we're doing, which is kind of terrifying when you think that that's essentially half our lives. We're not focused on what we're doing. And this is from like 2010. So you can imagine all the extra distractions we have now in our lives. And to think that we'll reach the end of our life and kind of go,
Mm.
essentially, we'll reach the end of our life and do that thing of walking into a room and going, "What did I come in here for again?" Like that'll be the representation of our entire life. You're like, "What was I doing? Oh, too late. I'm
Yeah.
dead." So, and obviously that study as well show that the more time our mind is elsewhere, the less happy we are. And so I
Wow.
just love the idea of what you're suggesting is that, and it doesn't have to be for 2 hours every morning. It's any time during the day. If you can just read a post-it or whatever, have some reminder to be able to go, okay, what's my attention on right now? What if, and just, I guess is it a way of just bringing yourself back in focus, back on in line?
Yeah, absolutely. And the mind's very powerful. So
Mm,
having means to train the mind, have the mind be a friend and not an enemy, as Krishna talks about in the Bhagavad Gita, is very important. And I use a countdown timer. I keep it with me whenever I travel. And that's another aid to, I'll ask the question, where am I investing my attention right now? And my mind will say, yeah, but I don't want to do it. The mind can be really stubborn, like a horse that's not trained. It's like, no, you're not riding me now. And so I just say, okay, listen, just for 5 minutes, and I'll set my countdown timer for 5 minutes and say, that's it, just 5 minutes. And I'm going to totally focus on the task at hand for 5 minutes or 10 minutes or whatever it may be. And I just notice immediately feel peaceful because I'm in the present. And I say, this next 5, 10 minutes is totally dedicated to this focus. And when the mind's focused on a purpose that you know is for your ultimate good, then you feel happy in that
mm.
moment.
So when
So
you do that exercise, just to so people could take that and get a little bit more clarity, when you do that exercise and you say, okay, you put the bridle on your mind and you drag it over towards you and you say, okay, what am I investing my attention on right now? Are you observing where your thoughts are going and have been for the last few minutes? Or are you actually directing them into your breath or your body, or what does that exercise look like?
Well, as soon as I decide that I'm going to dedicate my attention to a particular task, I
Mm.
bypass the mind because it's just once the mind agrees and says, "Yeah, go ahead. You have 10 minutes. That's it." Then then I'm in the moment. And it really is mindful because there's a
Mm.
way in which, okay, I'm purposeful now. I've given myself permission. I've taken permission from my mind, my dear mind, just give me 10 minutes, to do what I want to do, not what you
Mm.
are suggesting. And the next thing you know, it's not an intellectual exercise. You're actually right there doing it. And that is one of the ways that I can cobble a day through without being harassed by the mind constantly, is remembering that. And another one I mentioned in the book is the mantra meditation. It is something I've been practicing since I'm a monk. By repeating the mantra, I start my day with that kind of meditation. And when I'm practiced in bringing my mind back to the mantra, man means mind, and tra means to elevate, then it's like I already have a natural sense of fulfillment inwardly because it's naturally there when you go inwardly and are aware of the things I said earlier, that the mind is going on and you don't have to grab onto everything it says to you.
Mm.
Then there's a way I'm much more effective as I go out into the world. And the example I give in the book is an admonition that is, don't shop when you're hungry. Have you ever heard that one? Because you end up throwing a
Yeah.
bunch of stuff in the cart that you didn't really need because like the hunger's driving you. And so in the same way, it's like don't go out into the world before you've centered yourself and you've felt some inner satisfaction, like you've fed your soul. Once you're fed, and then you look at things in the world, you don't just grab everything. You're much more observant of what's important, what's your ultimate purpose in using them, and that very much helps. And it goes along. You can be supported by this final mantra of asking where I'm investing my attention at any
Mm.
given moment.
Just on mantras, do you have a favorite mantra that you go to when you're meditating? Is it something from Sanskrit? Is it something in English? Does it change? Or what do you like to repeat in your mind if you are going to use a mantra?
Well, the mantra that I received from my teacher, which was a mantra passed down through many generations of teachers going back millennia, was a mantra called the Maha Mantra, and it's said to be the omnibus mantra, like everything's in it. So one-stop shopping kind of mantra. I always like that kind of thing, one place. And
Yeah.
the first time I ever heard it was George Harrison. He sang it in a song, My Sweet Lord. And I was like, what is he doing? What is that? And the more I
Mm.
looked into it, I saw from the ancient scriptures that had this very sublime meaning of connecting us to our original source. And it's, that mantra that goes, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. That's the mantra that I use 98% of the time for my meditations. And I've, been doing it since 1973, and it's never gotten old.
Yeah. What do you think of the world of mindfulness meditation? I mean, it has become trendy over the last 10 or 15 years. Um, there's people like myself in this space that weren't in it, 20 years ago. I guess my own circumstance and journey through anxiety and things sort of brought me reluctantly into this space. And this is where I find myself working now. Having been practicing, it's easy to be cynical, I guess, is that's what I'm saying, particularly with social media. And maybe sometimes you look at these wonderful nuggets of wisdom being sort of butchered in 15-second videos. How do you feel about that precious world of yours that you've been engaged in, as you say, since the year I was born, now being so mainstream? Are you okay with it? Is it something you're happy about, or do you have reservations?
Well, as you say, I mean, there are different varieties of how it's presented. And I I'm very happy about the pursuit of improving one's consciousness. And wherever that appears, everyone's approaching from, not everyone, but people generally tend to have, according to their position in life and where they're starting from and their culture, they have a way of pursuing that. And I always find that the pursuit of purifying and uplifting consciousness is the main project for life. So wherever it's taking place sincerely, and if somebody's doing it really, you notice the difference. Intention. Like earlier you had said, where am I placing my intention right now? And
Yeah.
that's the root of it all. I mean, all our legal systems, everything's based around figuring out what somebody's intention is, right? Like
Mm.
when you go to court and you're trying a case, and it's like, did you mean to do this or was it an accident? Because there's a difference in how we're going to approach it. So it really depends on the intention. If somebody sincerely is trying to elevate their own consciousness and help others do it, then you can feel it. It's a different vibration altogether. If somebody's doing it purely for profit or they're just excerpting parts to put together something that sounds like it'll be appealing, it doesn't have the same power. So, yeah, I'm all for it. It's really what I believe the human form is meant for. What are universities for? Originally, they were for everyone to get together and let's talk and go over the best stuff that's on the planet. That's what a university was for. Now it's more into vocation and we got to make money and,
Mm.
things have to go faster, so then you stray off course. So anyone who's bringing it back on course, like you're doing, I noticed your things are sincere because as you're saying, stuff you went through, you're processing and then you're sharing it with everybody else. I think that's really what society is all about. So let's help each other. Come together in a city or on a podcast and let's process together and try to help one another.
Beautifully put. Vaish, it's been a real pleasure talking to you. I really recommend people go and read the four questions. I got mine on the Kindle version very easily, and but you can get the paperback. And is the Audible version available for people as well?
Just coming out soon.
Amazing. Well,
On its way.
we look forward to it. I really recommend it for people because it really does take. I think sometimes there can be stumbling blocks to when people see those long words, from those ancient Indian texts. It can be off-putting sometimes, but you have a beautiful way of just breaking it down, simplifying it, and then taking those lessons out and making them practical and accessible. And I guess that's what it's all about, as you say, and that's what this podcast is trying to do as well, make things accessible. So thank you so much, my friend. Really lovely to talk to you.
Likewise, Dermot. Thank you so much.